So the governor has a number of distinct roles here in the state of California, both formal and informal rules. And the formal rules are definitely set forth in several sections of Article 5 of our state constitution, but also in a state statute. The constitutional duties and powers granted to the governor in Article 5 include that the governor is required to make an annual report to the legislature on the condition of the state, which we refer to as the governor's State of the State address. This is in Section 3. The governor can require executive branch officials and their employees to provide information related to their duties in Section 4. The governor is permitted to make appointments to fill vacancies in offices, including those of the other constitutional officers, except the insurance commissioner. That's in Section 5. The governor is provided authority through statute to assign and reorganize the functions of executive branch officers and agencies, except it doesn't apply to the other statewide elected offices. This is referred to as a GRP, or the Governor's Reorganization Plan, and is set forth in Section 6. The governor is the commander in chief of the state's militia, and the governor is granted authority to call the militia into use to enforce the state's laws. That's in Section 7. There's also the governor is provided authority to grant a reprieve, pardon, or commutation, except in cases of impeachment. And the governor is also given authority to review the decisions of the parole authority for those convicted of murder. And that's in Section 8 of the California Constitution, Article 5. Now, in addition to these constitutional provisions, as I mentioned at the outset, there is also some sections of the California Government Code that are applicable to the governor. And these are found in Government Code sections 12001 to 12091. The following are some of the main duties and powers granted to the governor by statute. The governor may appoint and fix the salaries of his or her assistants and other personnel in Section 12001. The governor is required to appoint a person to represent the state of California in Washington, D.C., pursuant to Section 12001.5. The state's Washington, D.C. representative is required to provide an annual report to the Secretary of the Senate and the Chief Clerk of the Assembly under Section 12001.7. The governor is required to supervise the official conduct of all executive and ministerial officers of the executive branch of state government under Section 12010. The governor is required to determine the distribution in the executive agencies of deputies or employees who are selected pursuant to civil service exempt officers appointed by the governor pursuant to Section 12010.5. The governor may designate and as exempt from civil service positions in the executive branch agencies over which he or she has line responsibility and which have civil service exempt officers and employees under Section 12010.6. The governor is also required to ensure that all offices are filled and their duties are performed under Section 12011. The governor, in the event of a judicial office vacancy, is required to submit to the designated agency of the State Bar of California the names of all potential appointees or nominees for judicial office for evaluation of their judicial qualifications. This is in Section 12011.5. The governor is the sole official organ of communication between the government of California and the government of any other state or of the United States pursuant to Section 12012. The governor or a designee is authorized to give state approval to the transfer of offenders between the U.S. and a foreign country as provided by any treaty under Section 12012.1. The governor may direct the Attorney General of California to appear on behalf of the state and may employ additional legal counsel for cases against the state of California under section 12013. The governor may require the state's attorney general or a district attorney from one of the 58 counties to inquire into the affairs or management of any corporation authorized under state law. That's pursuant to section 12014. The governor may appoint for no more than 60 days after the conclusion of the governor's term persons to assist the governor in concluding different matters that are arising out of his or her official duties during the final term in office of the governor. That's pursuant to section 12015.5. The governor is required to report to the legislature each session any reprieves, pardons, and commutations that were granted pursuant to section 12017. The governor may designate which single state agency is responsible for each federal program in which federal money is given to the state to expend. That's under section 12018. The governor is required to keep registers related to applications for pardons or commutations, as well as statements made to him or her in capital cases, and in all appointments made by the governor. This is under section 12030. The governor is also required to keep accounts of all official expenses and disbursements and any awards or rewards offered by the governor, and that's pursuant to section 12031. The governor is also required to prepare and maintain an open central registry of appointive offices, which is known as the state appointments list, and it has to be made available to the general public in certain specified locations pursuant to section 12032. And the last item of interest out of the government code is that the governor is required to make copies of all information on the state appointments list and update materials accordingly. And that's pursuant to section 12033.2 of the California Government Code.